My name is Derek, and what I'm about to tell you still makes my skin crawl. It started like any other attempt to move on after a breakup. I downloaded Tinder. I wasn't used to online dating. I'd met all my girlfriends the old-fashioned way, at bars or through friends. But I was lonely, and when I matched with Leah, I thought maybe I'd gotten lucky. She was beautiful, way out of my league, honestly, and she seemed genuinely interested in me. We texted every day, even talked on the phone a few times. After 2 weeks, she suggested we meet. I offered to pick her up near her job, a salon in her town, and she insisted on taking me to her favorite spot, a field in a local park where you could lie on the grass and stargaze. That sounded innocent enough, romantic even. The night came. I drove an hour to her town, pulled up outside the salon, and there she was, exactly like her pictures. Smiling, waving, running to my car. She smelled of hairspray and perfume. For the first time in weeks, I felt excited again. The park entrance she guided me to was strange, though. It wasn't a proper gate, just a narrow access road that turned from asphalt to dirt almost immediately. No signs, no other cars. I remember gripping the wheel tighter. "Are you sure this is it?" "Of course," she laughed. "Trust me." We bounced along the road until it flattened out into a cement path beside a wide, open field. It was beautiful in a lonely way, and when I saw the stars coming out, I relaxed a little. That's when headlights appeared up the road, coming straight at us. A large van. I pulled as far to the side as I could, figuring it would pass. But instead, it slowed, and then stopped directly in front of me, bumper almost touching mine. My heart skipped. Before I could even ask what was happening, the driver's door opened. A huge man stepped out, flashlight in one hand, something heavy, like a pipe, in the other. I was a brand new police officer at the time, still believing in training and instinct. So I stepped out too, leaving Leah in the passenger seat. "What's the problem?" I demanded. The man squinted at me. "Sorry, son. I'm the caretaker here. We've had issues with poachers. Thought you might be one." His tone was calm, almost polite. He even smiled. After a tense pause, he backed up, muttered another apology, climbed into his van, and drove away. When I got back in the car, Leah barely looked up from her phone. She was texting furiously, not asking what happened, not even pretending to be shaken. I brushed it off, telling myself maybe she was nervous. We drove farther, found a dirt lot, and spread out a blanket. For an hour, we lay on the grass, eating snacks, sipping cheap wine, pointing at constellations. It almost felt normal, until the van came back. I saw its headlights cresting the hill, but this time it wasn't crawling. It was flying. My stomach dropped. Before I could react, it skidded into the lot, blocking my car completely. The same man jumped out, pipe in hand, his face twisted. And Leah, my date, jumped up, ran to his side, and stood with him. "Give us your keys and your wallet," she said coldly. "We don't want to hurt you." For a second, my brain refused to process it. The girl I'd been flirting with for weeks, who just shared wine and laughter with me, was setting me up. I whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." The man lunged. I fought him off, adrenaline surging, but he was massive. We hit the dirt, rolling. I scrambled to my feet, reached for my concealed carry, and drew my pistol. "Police!" I shouted. "Drop it!" The man froze. Leah's eyes went wide. They both raised their hands, pipes clattering to the ground. My chest was heaving, gun steady in my grip. I had them, but I needed backup. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and tried to give directions. The park was remote. No real landmarks, just access roads and empty fields. While I struggled to describe the location, Leah and the man exchanged a glance. Then, without a word, they bolted into the darkness. I chased them for a few steps. Then the forest exploded with gunfire. Not mine. The flashes lit up the trees ahead. Bullets cracked past me. I spun and sprinted back to my car, started the engine and rammed it into the van until I squeezed past. Tires screeched as I tore down the road, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd black out. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station. Under the harsh, fluorescent lights, surrounded by strangers, I finally felt safe. When officers arrived, I told them everything: the date, the van, the ambush. They investigated, but by the time we returned to the park, the van was gone. Later, detectives searched Leah's supposed salon. The employees had never heard of her. The name was fake. The photos, probably stolen. It was all a setup, a long con designed to lure me into a trap. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't carried my weapon, if I'd hesitated a little longer, if I'd actually trusted her smile. I don't use Tinder anymore. I don't chase starlight with strangers. Because I know now, monsters don't always hide in the woods. Sometimes they wait for you in your inbox, smiling, promising the stars. My name is Aaron, and I almost stepped into the last car ride of my life because of a single letter on a license plate. It was late, past midnight, when I left the bar. My friends had all disappeared into the night with their partners, and I was left standing under the buzzing neon sign, the taste of whiskey still clinging to my throat. I didn't feel drunk, just tired, and I wanted nothing more than to crawl into the back of my rideshare and go home. I opened the app. Your driver is 2 minutes away. Black Toyota Camry, plate ending in 7-2-Q. I leaned against the wall, hugging my coat tight. The street was empty except for a few puddles, reflecting street lamps. Then, I saw headlights. A black Camry rolled up, smooth and quiet, pulling to the curb. The driver leaned across the seat, window down. Aaron. Something about the way he said my name felt wrong. Flat, mechanical. No smile, no small talk. But it was late, I was exhausted, and my brain wanted to believe this was my ride. I stepped closer, my hand on the door handle. And then, something flickered in my head. A detail I almost ignored. The license plate, 7-2-O. Not Q. Just one letter off. I froze. My hand hovered above the handle. The driver saw my hesitation. His eyes, dark, impatient, flicked up to mine. "Come on," he said, voice sharper now. "Get in. You're holding up traffic." There was no traffic. The street was dead. My pulse quickened. "I'll wait for the next one," I muttered, stepping back. He leaned farther out the window. "Don't be stupid, girl. It's cold. Just get in." That's when I noticed the back door handle. Scratched, almost warped. The kind you see when child locks have been messed with. And the faintest smell drifting from the car, chemical and bitter, not cigarettes, not alcohol. Something else. Every instinct screamed at me. I shook my head, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Wrong car!" He cursed, slammed the gear shift, and the Camry peeled off down the road. My knees went weak, but I pulled out my phone and called my driver. "Where are you?" I asked. "Turning the corner now," a cheerful voice replied. Seconds later, another black Camry approached, but this one had a different driver. A woman smiling, waving, her plate exactly 7-2-Q. I climbed in, heart still racing. "Hey," she said gently, noticing my face. "Are you okay?" I told her about the first car. She frowned. "You know that happens more than people think. Fake drivers. They slap on temporary plates or stickers. I always tell riders, double check before you get in." When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his eyes in the dark, the way his tone shifted when I hesitated. That car wasn't there by accident. He knew my name. He knew I was waiting for a ride. Maybe he'd been watching the bar, scrolling through the app, or just gambling on drunk, tired girls not paying attention. The next morning, I called the rideshare company. They said they'd make a note of it. The police took my report, but without more details, there wasn't much they could do. Weeks later, I saw a headline: "Fake rideshare driver arrested after attempted abduction." The description matched him almost perfectly. Wrong plates, black sedan, chemical smell. I stared at my screen, my stomach turning to ice. One letter, one small hesitation. That's all that stood between me and a headline of my own. Since then, I've never stepped into a rideshare without triple-checking the plate, the photo, and the driver's name. And if anything feels wrong, I walk away. Because I know what happens if you don't. My name is Lily, and for 3 weeks a stranger lived in my apartment without paying rent, without speaking a word, without letting me see his face. It started small. A mug moved half an inch to the left. A sweater folded the way I don't fold. The smell was the first real tell. Faint tobacco, stale and sour, clinging to the hallway where I never let anyone smoke. I blamed my own stress. I was studying for certification exams and sleeping badly. Maybe I was forgetting what went where. On Tuesday, the chain on the door was angled differently when I came home. I stood in the entryway with my tote bag biting into my shoulder and felt the crawl of something primitive move across my back. I lived on the 3rd floor of an old building with a live-in super named Joel. Big man, friendly, always there in 5. He had keys to every unit. He'd borrowed mine a month earlier to check the radiator, disappearing with my ring jangling in his fist. He brought them back 15 minutes later and grinned. All set. That night I couldn't shake the idea that my set wasn't set at all. So I made a trap. Silly, childish, but mine. I taped a hair across the top of the doorframe to the latch side, the kind of hairline thread you only notice if you're looking. I took a picture. Then I sprinkled a palmful of flour on the kitchen floor, in a thin crescent between the sink and the fridge, like a pale white moon. It felt ridiculous. It also felt like locking eyes with a shadow and saying, "I see you." I slept with the bathroom light on. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to a sound like a soft exhale, a floorboard answering a careful foot. I held my breath until my lungs burned and told myself it could be heat expanding the pipes, the building settling, the city breathing. I didn't get up. I didn't want to know. Morning made me brave. The hair at the door was snapped. In the flower were 2 ovals, the tidy tread of a large boot heel pivoting toward my bedroom, and away again. I crouched until my knees cracked, staring at the perfect pattern. I pressed my finger into the print and came away white. Not a dream, not stress. Someone had been inside. I called the management office. "It's probably maintenance," the receptionist said. "We sent a notice last week, vents." I didn't get a notice. "It might have fallen under your doormat." "Why would maintenance come at night?" Silence. "I'll check with Joel." I hung up. My phone screen showed my own reflection. Dry lips, pupils wide. I should have called the police. Instead, I changed my clothes in the bathroom with the door locked, slid my laptop into my tote, and went to work. All day, my chest felt tight, like a fist closing. When I got back, the flour was gone, not kicked through, wiped. The floor gleamed in a perfect semicircle. My stomach turned. Whoever had been here had noticed my trap and cleaned it. I didn't sleep that night. I made tea and sat on the couch with every light on, TV muted, listening to the building. At 1:06 a.m., the hall outside creaked. A key kissed metal. I moved quietly to the peephole. The fisheye showed an empty corridor and the warped brass of my own number. Then, a slow pressure on the knob, testing again. The deadbolt held. A minute later, footsteps retreated down the stairs. I stood there until dawn, my hand shaking on the chain. The next day, I bought new locks. The hardware store guy cut me a reinforced deadbolt and a small Jimmy-proof latch. "You in an old building?" he asked. Keep this key on you, not on a hook. He winked. And get a camera. I installed the bolt myself, palms sweating, heart racing at every scrape of metal. At 11 p.m., I wedged a chair under the doorknob like a movie cliché. Then, I opened a video call to my friend Nessa, propped the phone on a bookshelf and said, "If I say the words, 'What's the pasta water?' call 911 and my landlord." She laughed until she saw my face. At 2:40 a.m., the sound came. A whispering scratch, softer than a knock, more patient than one. The new bolt trembled in its socket. The chair vibrated. Nessa's voice came tiny from the phone. "Lil, are you awake?" I didn't answer. I moved barefoot across the floor, picked up the small can of hairspray and my flashlight. The doorknob shifted a quarter inch. A new key. A slow, sinking click. The bolt held. Whoever it was tried again. The chair legs creaked, inching. I lifted the flashlight and shouted loud as I could, "Joel, if that's you, I am calling the police." The sound stopped. A pause. Then a long, slow exhale. Footsteps went away. I said the pasta phrase. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed with management on the line. "Joel says he wasn't there," the voice said, suddenly brittle. "Maybe a neighbor." I told her about the broken hair, the erased flower, the 3 a.m. breathing. She promised to send someone in the morning. Morning came with an officer and a thin woman from the office. We opened the door together. The apartment smelled like detergent and something else underneath, a damp, woolly smell. The officer walked room to room, respectful but unconvinced, until he opened my bedroom closet. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you'll want to stand back." On the closet floor, a folded blanket, an empty water bottle, 2 granola bar wrappers tucked low behind a stack of shoeboxes, and a cigarette butt mashed flat. Along the inner jamb, at shoulder height, were tiny scratches, the kind keys make when you're pulling a door closed from the inside. The officer shone his light up. My ceiling hatch, the one to the crawl space I'd never used, wore a fresh thumbprint in the dust. We all stood very still. They called another unit and maintenance. When the hatch lifted, insulation dust fell like gray snow. A second officer wriggled up with his flashlight and said, "There's a path, and footprints on the beams." He coughed. "Someone's been moving between units." The superintendent arrived last. Joel. He filled the doorway, hands on hips, reading the room too slowly. "What's all this?" he said, smiling with only his teeth. The officer asked for his ring of keys. Joel hesitated, then produced a bundle the size of a fist. I recognized my own brass tag by its little dent. He'd had a copy made. I could feel it before I saw it. The officer turned a plain key over in his palm, freshly cut. They didn't arrest him then. Not enough, they said. The building changed policies that afternoon. A locksmith drilled every cylinder on the 3rd floor. I stood in the hallway with my tote and watched Joel argue with the property manager, watched his face go the color of old clay. Later, an investigator found a folding cot in the crawl space above Unit 3B. I learned that a complaint from 2F had been lost. Strange noises, missing food. Nothing traced neatly enough to charge. That night I slept at Nessa's, my body trembling with the aftershocks you only feel when the dangers finally moved an inch away. When I returned days later, I brought a cheap door camera, a motion sensor, and a second deadbolt. I still wake sometimes to the sound of breathing that isn't there. This is the part people want me to end with something empowering. Lessons learned, locks upgraded, the predator banished. But the truth is smaller and heavier. I made tea the next morning and cried into the steam because the kitchen smelled like me again. I keep the photo of the broken hair on my phone. When friends move into old buildings, I help them sprinkle flour and tie threads only they can see. We laugh while we do it. We call it superstition. I call it the difference between a feeling and proof, between a story and a statement, between thinking you're alone and knowing you aren't. My name is Claire, and I almost became a headline because of a house showing that never should have happened. I'm a real estate agent. I work late sometimes, but I don't do after-hours showings. That's drilled into us from day one. Never go alone, never go at night. But when the call came in, the couple sounded desperate. "We're flying out in the morning," the man said. "This is our only chance. Can you show it to us tonight? Please, it's our dream property." I hesitated. It was a large colonial on the edge of town, a listing that had been sitting too long. I wanted it sold. I wanted the commission. And honestly, I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. "Fine," I said. 9 o'clock. The sun had slipped below the horizon by the time I pulled up. The house loomed like a stage set, windows dark, driveway empty. No cars, no couple. Just me, the wind, and the sound of crickets. I called the number, no answer. Then a text. "Doors unlocked. We're inside." A chill went through me. Buyers don't just walk into a showing without me. But the front door was slightly ajar, so I pushed it open. The air inside smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. I flicked on my flashlight. The foyer was stripped of staging furniture. Bare bulbs dangled overhead, buzzing. I called out, "Hello." No answer. The living room was empty, the kitchen immaculate. Too immaculate, like no one had cooked there in years. The only detail that stood out was the smoke detector on the ceiling. Its red light blinked, steady and unnatural. I tilted my beam upward and saw a tiny lens glinting back, a camera wired into the detector. My stomach dropped. I told myself, "You're overthinking. Investors use cameras all the time," but my gut screamed. And then I saw it. The basement door slightly open, faint light seeping through the crack. I should have walked out right then, but curiosity is a cruel thing. I pulled the door wider and stepped down creaking wooden stairs into a basement lined with plastic sheets. They hung from the ceiling, dividing the space into sections like hospital curtains. A metal drain gleamed in the floor. "Hello," I whispered, my throat dry. A draft stirred the plastic. Somewhere behind the sheets, something shifted. My phone buzzed. Another text from the buyer. "We're running late. Stay there." I didn't respond. My fingers shook as I snapped a quick photo of the setup and sent it to my partner, with a single word, "Now." I turned, pretending to cough, muttering like I was on the phone. "Yes, I'm inside. Officers are 5 minutes out." My voice echoed, thin and strained. Then came the sound. Not footsteps exactly, more like the scrape of a boot pivoting on concrete. I froze, staring at the shifting shadows behind the plastic sheets. Someone was there. I backed up slowly, every nerve screaming. When I reached the stairs, I forced myself not to run. I climbed 1, 2, 3 steps, then bolted. I slammed the front door behind me and sprinted to my car, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. I jammed the keys, locked the doors, and peeled out, gravel spitting under the tires. In my rearview mirror, I thought I saw the front curtain twitch. At the gas station 2 miles away, my partner met me. I showed him the photos, my hands trembling. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was crazy. He called the police. When they entered the house, it was empty. No plastic sheets, no drain, no camera in the smoke detector. Every trace of what I'd seen was gone. The official report said no evidence. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe stress and paranoia painted shadows into monsters. That's what some people believe. But I know what I saw. I know the smell of bleach. I know the way that camera blinked red tracking me. I know someone was there, standing just behind that curtain, waiting. Now, when new agents ask me for advice, I don't tell them about staging tricks or mortgage hacks. I tell them the rule I nearly broke the night I almost disappeared. Never show a house alone after dark. My name is Daniel, and what I saw that night on the highway still feels like a scene from a nightmare. It was late, close to midnight, and I was driving home with my mom after visiting relatives. We were on a rural stretch of road, the kind with no lights, no exits for miles. The air was heavy with mist, headlights catching only the silver edge of trees. Then, up ahead we saw hazard lights blinking. A car sat crooked on the shoulder, hood open, one door half ajar. Next to it stood a man waving frantically, his arms slicing the night. "Looks like a crash," Mom murmured. She slowed. The man shouted something we couldn't hear, gesturing desperately. And then, almost on cue, a white ambulance appeared behind us, siren off but lights dimly flashing. Relief hit me. Help had already arrived. The ambulance pulled up fast, too fast, cutting across the lane to stop at an angle. Two men jumped out. Their movements were quick, but wrong. No calm efficiency. No gear slung over their shoulders. Just black hoodies under reflective vests. Gloves pulled too high, like costumes instead of uniforms. "Stay in the car," Mom whispered. But one of the men was already walking toward us, waving. "We've got it, ma'am. Just step out, we'll check you both." Something felt off. The ambulance was plain white. No logo, no lettering, not even a number. Just magnetic plates clinging slightly askew. I glanced at the stretcher they wheeled out. Not a stretcher. At least not one meant for the injured. It was bare metal, with straps dangling loose, and plastic ties piled at the foot. The man tapped on Mom's window. "We'll take it from here. Please step out." Mom's hand hovered over the door handle. Her face was pale in the dash light. And in that moment, every instinct in me screamed no. I forced a laugh, loud and shaky. "Careful!" I shouted, pointing toward the ambulance. "Fuel's leaking. Your rig's smoking near the exhaust." Both men jerked around, startled. One cursed. That second of distraction was enough. Mom slammed the car into gear, gravel spitting as we swerved around their vehicle and bolted down the highway. In the rear view, I saw them scrambling, one running toward the ambulance, the other still holding the straps. The hazard lights from the broken car cut out instantly, plunging the road into black. We didn't stop until we reached a police checkpoint 15 miles away. We stumbled out, voices tumbling over each other as we explained. The officers took notes, exchanged dark looks, and sent a patrol back the way we'd come. They never found the white ambulance. Weeks later, Mom showed me a news clipping. A woman had gone missing not far from that stretch of road. Witnesses reported seeing her pulled into a white van marked with flashing lights. Every time I think about that night, my stomach knots. If I hadn't spoken up, if Mom had opened her door, if we'd believed the act for a second longer, we would have been strapped to that stretcher. Now, whenever I see an ambulance, even a real one with clean lettering and proper badges, I hesitate. I look twice. I check for the details, logos, plates, the way the crew moves. Because sometimes the people who rush toward you with promises of help aren't there to save you. Sometimes they're hunting,